There's a scientifically proven phenomenon that most people are completely unaware of, and once you understand its implications, it will be impossible to keep living the way you were. This isn't an esoteric theory or a spiritual metaphor. It's a principle demonstrated in laboratories thousands of times that reveals how the simple act of observation fundamentally alters the structure of reality. Subatomic particles change their behavior when they are observed, shifting from waves of probability to fixed points of matter. And while physicists still debate the exact role of consciousness in this process, the philosophical implications for how we live our lives are undeniable. I'm going to tell you about someone who could be you, a woman named Sarah who was trapped in the same existential loop day after day, waking up every morning with that heavy feeling in her chest, as if the very air in her room was saturated with the weight of unfulfilled promises and abandoned dreams. She had tried absolutely everything the self-development industry had to offer. 3 years of cognitive behavioral therapy twice a week, an executive coach who cost more than she could comfortably afford, transcendental meditation learned directly from a certified instructor who flew in from India, spiritual retreats in Sedona and Costa Rica, where she drank ayahuasca and purged what she thought were her traumas. But she always, inevitably, cruelly, woke up to the same limiting reality waiting for her like a prison without bars. Her toxic relationship with Marcus was a 7-year emotional roller coaster. He would alternate between moments of intense affection that made her feel like the most loved woman in the world, and periods of glacial coldness where she questioned her own existence. "You're exaggerating," he'd say when she tried to express her feelings. "You always blow things out of proportion." And she believed him, because after hearing it hundreds of times, his voice had become her inner voice. Her job at a digital marketing firm drained not only her energy, but her vital essence, sucking every drop of creativity she possessed and turning it into reports no one read and campaigns for products she would never buy herself. Her bank account, perpetually in the red, was a constant reminder that, at 34, she was further from financial stability than she was at 24. The emotional patterns of chronic anxiety, that constant tingling sensation under her skin, had haunted her since she was 13, when her father left home on an ordinary Thursday without explanation, leaving only a note that said, "I need to find my own way." If you resonate with this feeling of being stuck in a loop that seems programmed by some sadistic force in the universe, if you've ever woken up at 3 a.m. a cold sweat thinking, "This can't be all there is," then subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Because what I'm about to reveal isn't just another empty technique sold by internet gurus, but the scientific and practical understanding of how you have been unconsciously using a fundamental power of quantum physics against yourself every single day, every single moment, with every single glance you cast upon your life. Sarah's turning point came on an ordinary Tuesday in November, a cold night where she was lying in her bed, still in her work clothes, because she didn't even have the energy to change. She had just finished an argument with Marcus over text, where he had once again accused her of being too dramatic when she asked to talk about the future of their relationship. Exhausted from trying so hard to change, to force things, to want things to be different, from sheer physical and emotional burnout, she simply stopped. It wasn't resignation or giving up in a depressive sense. It was something entirely different, something she had never experienced in her adult life. She stopped trying to fix Marcus, stopped visualizing a better future, stopped repeating positive affirmations that sounded false in her own mouth, and stopped fighting against what was. And in that space of total surrender, in the emptiness that emerged when she let go of all the ropes she had been holding so tightly, she simply observed. Without judgment, without an agenda, without needing anything to change, she just observed her life as if seeing it for the first time. And something fundamental dissolved in that moment. It wasn't her external situation that instantly changed, but her relationship with reality began to transform in a way that defied all logic she knew. Over the next 3 days, synchronicities she could only describe as impossible began to cascade. On Wednesday, Marcus called her crying, something that hadn't happened in years, saying he'd had a disturbing dream where she disappeared from his life, and he realized how much he was losing her. On Thursday, her boss, known for being inflexible, called her into a meeting and offered her a department change she didn't even know existed, with a 40% raise and remote work 3 days a week. On Saturday, she received an email about a miscalculation in her favor from an insurance policy she had taken out 5 years earlier, depositing the exact amount she needed to pay off her most urgent debts. It was as if the entire universe had rearranged itself in response to this subtle yet profound shift in the quality of her observation. What happened to Sarah is based on one of the most revolutionary and unsettling experiments in the history of science. In 1801, a British physicist named Thomas Young conducted an experiment that would shake the very foundations of what we thought we knew about the nature of reality. Young was trying to settle a centuries-old debate. Was light made of particles, as Isaac Newton believed, or was it a wave, as Christian Huygens proposed? To test this, he created an ingeniously simple apparatus. He shined a light through two narrow, parallel slits cut into an opaque barrier to see what pattern it would create on a detection screen placed behind it. If light were made of particles, like tiny marbles, Young expected to see two distinct bands on the screen, corresponding to the two slits. But what he observed changed physics forever. When the light passed through the slits without being observed or measured, it created a pattern that was impossible according to all known classical physics: multiple alternating bands of light and darkness, an interference pattern that could only exist if each particle of light was somehow passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with itself, behaving like a wave that spreads out and recombines. But the real revolution came in the 20th century, when scientists could repeat the experiment with technology capable of detecting individual photons. They placed detectors to observe which specific slit each photon passed through, hoping to finally solve the mystery. What they discovered was so shocking that Albert Einstein spent the rest of his life unsuccessfully trying to find an alternative explanation. The exact moment a detector was turned on to observe the photon's path, the interference pattern vanished completely. The particles began to behave exactly like tiny, solid balls, passing through one slit or the other, but never both, creating just a bands on the detection screen. The observation, the simple act of measuring or detecting, forced the light to choose a definitive path, instantly collapsing it from a wave of infinite possibilities spread across space into a concrete particle with a specific location. This phenomenon has been replicated with electrons, with entire atoms, and even with large molecules containing dozens of atoms, always with the same unsettling and undeniable result. When unobserved, particles exist in a state called quantum superposition, where all possibilities coexist simultaneously in a cloud of probability. But in the instant of observation, the exact moment information about the system is registered, all that potentiality collapses into a single, concrete, measurable reality. Physicists have developed several interpretations to explain this phenomenon. The Copenhagen interpretation suggests the wave function collapses upon measurement. The many worlds interpretation proposes that all possibilities continue to exist in parallel universes. Decoherence theory argues that interaction with the environment causes the collapse. But while they debate the exact mechanism, the phenomenon itself is indisputable, verified in thousands of labs worldwide, and forms the basis of technologies we use daily, like lasers and quantum computers. And here is the connection that should make you stop everything and pay attention. If you, your body, your brain, every cell of your being, every object around you, every person in your life, if everything is fundamentally made of these same subatomic particles that demonstrably respond to the act of observation, what does that suggest about the power of your conscious attention? Every time you direct your awareness to something, be it your bank account, your relationships, your health, your future, you are not just passively noticing something that exists in a fixed and immutable form. There is an active selection process happening, a fundamental participation in which specific version of reality crystallizes out of the infinite quantum field of potential. The devastating problem, and I mean truly devastating in its implications, is that most of us are observing our reality with fresh awareness and open possibilities, but through layers upon layers of psychological conditioning, unresolved trauma, inherited beliefs from previous generations, and cultural programming we absorbed before we could even think critically. Each of these layers acts as a dense filter that predetermines which version of reality we will collapse before we even look, like wearing colored glasses, and then being surprised that the whole world appears tinted in that specific color. We are using this fundamental creative power, this quantum gift of actively participating in the creation of reality, to compulsively and obsessively recreate the past in the present, trapped in a self-generated quantum loop that we repeat thousands of times a day without even realizing we are the ones generating the repetition. It's like having a magic wand capable of creating any reality and using it only to recreate the same prison every single day. Think about how Sarah woke up every morning. Before her eyes were even fully open, before her consciousness was fully online, her brain was already reconstructing yesterday's emotional avatar. Another day in the same meaningless life was the first semi-conscious thought. She would grab her phone while still in bed, already expecting no important messages, already anticipating the feeling of emptiness at seeing only notifications from apps trying to sell her something. When she checked her banking app, her stomach was already clenched before she even saw the balance, her body already producing cortisol and adrenaline based on the memory of scarcity, not the present reality. When she looked at Marcus sleeping beside her, she didn't see the real man lying there with his complexities and potentials. She saw through the filter of 7 years of accumulated hurts, each of his micro-expressions being interpreted through the lens of "he doesn't love me enough, he will eventually abandon me as my father did." Her brain, this biological supercomputer optimized for pattern recognition, sought out and found evidence that confirmed her negative expectations, completely ignoring any data that contradicted the established narrative. Her nervous system, this magnificently complex evolutionary apparatus developed over millions of years to ensure survival, interpreted the familiar, even when painful, as safe. The reptilian brain, the oldest part of the brain responsible for fight, flight, or freeze responses, preferred the known pain to the unknown potential. "Better the devil you know," the ancestral programming whispered, and so she continued to subconsciously choose to collapse the same limited reality, day after day. Modern neuroscience has revealed something simultaneously fascinating and terrifying about how we process reality. Studies using advanced brain imaging technology that your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of information per second through your 5 senses. Your eyes alone send 10 million bits per second to the brain. Your skin adds another million. Your ears process 100,000. But your consciousness, your subjective experience of the moment, can only process about 50 bits per second. This means that over 99.9% of all available information in the field of reality is being filtered out before it even reaches your conscious awareness. And who decides what gets through this extremely restrictive filter? Your deep-seated beliefs about how the world works, your most charged emotional memories, your unresolved traumas that still live in your body, your cultural conditioning about what is possible or impossible. Your entire accumulated past is literally editing your experience of the present in real time, deciding which aspects of reality you're permitted to perceive. When Sarah finally understood this, not just intellectually, but viscerally, when the realization permeated every cell in her body, she had what she can only describe as a reverse epiphany. Instead of discovering something new, she realized what had always been there. Instead of gaining a power, she recognized she already had it, but had been using it against herself. It was like finding out you've been driving a luxury car your whole life using only first gear, wondering why the journey was so difficult. She realized she had far more control than she ever imagined. But that control had been operating on autopilot, collapsing realities based on outdated emotional software that was installed in her childhood and never updated. Every time she looked at Marcus, she wasn't really seeing him. She was seeing through the filter of abandonment that was installed when she was 7 years old and her father left without explanation. That filter was literally selecting from the infinite field of quantum possibilities that Marcus presented in every moment only the behaviors and expressions that confirmed her deep expectation of being abandoned. Marcus could show love in 1,000 different ways throughout the day. A gentle touch on the shoulder as he passed by, making her coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked, random affectionate texts. But Sarah's perceptual system, calibrated to detect abandonment, could only collapse and make real the versions that aligned with her fundamental fear. The moments he was distracted by his phone became evidence of disinterest. Any delay was interpreted as neglect. Normal silences were processed as growing emotional distance. This brings us to a revelation that should be taught in every school, but remains obscured by our outdated materialist education based on Newtonian physics of linear cause and effect. You do not live in a fixed, deterministic universe where things simply are what they are, independent of your conscious participation. You live, breathe, and exist in a dynamic, responsive quantum field where every act of observation is an act of co-creation, where your attention doesn't function like a passive camera recording pre-existing events, but like an active magnetic field that is literally pulling from the infinite the specific experiences that resonate with your dominant frequency of observation. The Institute of HeartMath, a research center in California that has been studying the connection between the heart, mind, and emotions for 3 decades, has documented something extraordinary. Using SQUAD magnetometers, superconducting quantum interference devices capable of detecting magnetic fields billions of times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field, they measured the electromagnetic field produced by the human heart and discovered that it extends up to 10 feet from the body in all directions. This field is not just a byproduct of the heart's electrical activity. It's an active information field that contains data about your emotional state, your beliefs, your intentions. And even more fascinating, this field interacts with and influences other electromagnetic fields around it, including the fields of other people and even sensitive electronic equipment. In a study published in 2017, HeartMath researchers showed that when a person enters a state of heart coherence, a state where the heart's rhythm becomes orderly and harmonious, this field becomes significantly more organized and powerful, capable of influencing surrounding systems in measurable ways. Understanding this deeply, not just as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality in every cell of your body, you realize that all the problems in your life are not fundamentally problems of action. They are problems of observation. It's not about doing more or doing differently. It's about seeing differently. When you change the quality of your observation, when you literally clean the perceptual lenses through which you are collapsing your reality moment by moment, the external world has no choice but to reorganize itself to mirror your new frequency of perception. This doesn't happen because of moral deservingness or divine favor, but because of the fundamental physics of how reality operates at the quantum level. There is an absolutely fundamental difference, and I want to stress fundamental in the most literal sense of the word, between observing with neutral awareness and what I'm going to call traumatic observation. This difference is not merely psychological or philosophical. It is energetic and quantum, creating radically different outcomes in the field of possibilities that is constantly responding to the specific quality of your attention. When you observe through trauma, and we all do this dozens or hundreds of times a day without realizing it, you are not truly observing the present. You are projecting the past onto the future through the current moment, using the now as a blank screen onto which your dysregulated nervous system projects the movie of what has already happened, expecting, anticipating, almost unconsciously wishing for it to happen again, because at least it's familiar, and the primitive brain interprets familiar as safe, even when it's painful. Let me give you a specific example to make this crystal clear. Imagine you had a profound experience of betrayal in the past. Someone you trusted completely, perhaps your first love at 19, shattered that trust in a devastating way. You discovered they had been cheating on you 4 months while swearing eternal love. This experience created what neuroscience calls an implicit memory, a memory stored not just in the brain, but in the entire nervous system, in the body itself. Years later, you're in a new relationship with someone completely different. But every time this person takes a little too long to reply to a text, every time their tone of voice shifts slightly, every time they look at their phone with an expression immediately decipher, your entire body goes on high alert. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, fires off danger signals before the information even reaches the prefrontal cortex where rational thought occurs. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, your pupils dilate, your heart races, your breathing becomes shallow. In this altered state of traumatic consciousness, you literally lose the biological capacity to perceive any evidence that contradicts your suspicion. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for nuanced thought and considering multiple perspectives, goes offline. You are operating from the primitive brain, which only knows black or white, safe or dangerous, friend or foe. The quantum field, containing infinite possible versions of this present moment, from the most innocent to the most threatening, receives your fear-laden observation as a clear instruction which specific reality to manifest. Like a perfectly efficient quantum computer that never questions the commands it receives, the field delivers exactly what you are observing, not what is objectively happening, but what your observational frequency is commanding to happen. Your partner could genuinely be doing nothing more suspicious than answering work emails or watching cat videos on YouTube, but your traumatic observation is actively creating micro-realities where completely innocent gestures transform into evidence of betrayal, where neutral words gain sinister subtexts, where normal silences become confirmations of secrets being hidden. Sarah lived this 4 years with Marcus. Every time he came home 15 minutes late, her body would go into a panic. "He's with someone else," the voice of trauma would whisper. "He's making excuses to not be with me." And so she would observe Marcus through this lens of suspicion when he arrived. She would scan his face for signs of guilt. She would analyze his tone of voice, searching for lies. She would discreetly smell his clothes for strange perfume. And Marcus, subconsciously sensing this energy of distrust even without words being spoken, would become defensive, irritable, and distant, confirming Sarah's fears exactly. Most people go their entire lives without realizing they are doing this, thinking they are just being realistic or learning from the past or protecting themselves from getting hurt again. They don't understand that this supposed protection is the very mechanism that guarantees the repetition of their suffering, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that has nothing to do with fate and everything to do with the physics of observation. But, and this is a but, that can change your entire existence. What if you could identify the exact moment before you fall into traumatic observation and consciously choose to observe from a completely different place? I'm not talking about superficial positive thinking or pretending traumas didn't happen. I'm talking about something far more radical and yet far simpler. I'm talking about learning to recognize the specific energetic signature of traumatic observation in your body. For Sarah, it was a tightening in her solar plexus accompanied by heat rising in her chest. For others, it might be an instant clenching of the jaw, a tightness in the throat, tingling in the hands, a weight on the shoulders. Each person has their unique signature. And using these bodily signals as sacred alarms, as wake-up bells that alert you to the fact that you are about to collapse a timeline you do not want to experience. In that moment of recognition, in that precious interval between stimulus and response, in that sacred gap of awareness, there is a golden opportunity to do something completely different. It's what Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, called the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose our response in any given situation. The difference between reactive observation and sovereign observation is so profound that experiencing the latter, after a lifetime trapped in the former, is like living your entire life in black and white and suddenly discovering that colors exist, not as an intellectual concept, but as a living, vibrant, undeniable experience pulsing through every cell of your being. Reactive observation happens when your nervous system is in a state of activation, when old wounds are driving your perception, when you are seeing through the eyes of your wounded self from 5, 10, 15 years ago. In this state, you have no real choice about what you will perceive. Your brain has already pre-selected reality based on threat patterns encoded in your amygdala before the information even reaches your prefrontal cortex, where conscious decisions are made. It's like watching a movie with virtual reality goggles that show a completely different story, but you've forgotten you're wearing the goggles. Sovereign observation is something completely, radically, fundamentally different. It is not something you do. It is something you become when your nervous system is regulated enough for you to fully inhabit the present moment without needing to defend it, attack it, or flee from it. In this state, which neuroscientists call the window of tolerance, and mystics throughout the ages have called presence, you have access to a completely different type of perception. It is a perception that is not contaminated by the compulsive need to confirm old fears or validate obsolete defenses. It is a perception that can actually see what is happening instead of only seeing what it expects or fears is happening. Your visual field literally expands. Studies show that when we move out of a fight or flight state, our peripheral vision increases by up to 28%. You begin to notice details, nuances, and subtleties that were completely invisible when you were in survival mode. Most importantly, and this has been measured in labs using biofield detection equipment, your personal electromagnetic frequency changes in a dramatic and measurable way. The chaotic, erratic energetic signature of trauma is replaced by a coherent, harmonious wave that the quantum field around you cannot ignore and must respond to. I'm now going to teach you the specific technique that Sarah discovered almost by accident that Tuesday night, but which has since been refined by studying the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, and ancient contemplative practices. When practiced consistently, even for just 7 minutes a day, this technique can literally rewire your observational capacity at the most fundamental level, changing not only how you see reality, but which reality you are able to perceive and therefore experience. When you feel the first signs that you're about to enter reactive observation, when you recognize those familiar alarms of activation in your body, stop absolutely everything you are doing and execute this precise protocol. It works because it combines principles of nervous system regulation validated by neuroscience with a quantum understanding of how observation collapses possibilities into reality. First, place one hand over your heart and the other on your abdomen, specifically 3 fingers below your navel, where Eastern traditions locate the hara or lower dantian. You are creating a physical circuit connecting your 3 brains. Yes, you have 3 brains. The cephalic brain in your head with its 86 billion neurons, the cardiac brain in your heart with 40,000 neurons that can learn, remember, and make decisions independently of the brain in your head, and the enteric brain in your gut with 500 million neurons, more than the spinal cord, processing information and profoundly influencing your emotional state. Now, breathe in deeply through your nose for a slow count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Then exhale through your mouth, making a soft R sound, for a count of 8. This specific 4-4-8 ratio is not arbitrary. It has been extensively studied and is proven to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your nervous system responsible for rest, digestion, and regeneration, while calming the sympathetic nervous system responsible for fight or flight. As you continue breathing at this rhythm, bring your awareness to the space around your body, not what's inside it, but the energetic field that extends roughly 5 to 6 feet in all directions. This is not an esoteric concept. It is a measurable field that scientists detect using SQAD magnetometers, instruments so sensitive they can measure magnetic fields 1 billion times weaker than the Earth's. This field contains information about your current emotional state, your deepest beliefs, your unconscious expectations, basically your complete energetic operating system that is constantly broadcasting to the quantum field around you, saying, "This is what I expect to experience. This is what I believe is possible. This is what I am ready to receive." Now comes the part that changes everything. The subtle yet profound shift that transforms reactive observation into sovereign observation. Instead of trying to change what you are observing, instead of forcing a positive perspective or fighting against negative thoughts, simply observe your own observation. Become aware of how you are looking, not just what you are looking at. It's a subtle but profound move of metacognition, like taking a step back within your own consciousness and noticing, I'm observing through the filter of fear right now, or I am seeing this through the lens of scarcity, or my observation is colored by anger. The exact moment you recognize this, without judgment, without making it a problem, without resistance, something truly magical happens. The identification with the observation instantly dissolves. You cease to be the observation and become the conscious space in which the observation is happening. It's like stepping out of a movie where you were the main character and realizing you are actually the screen on which the movie is being projected. And from this position of expanded awareness, from this 0 point of pure consciousness untainted by conditioning, you can truly choose for the first time instead of automatically reacting, how you want to observe, from which specific frequency you want to collapse your reality. Sarah practiced this religiously. At first, she could only hold sovereign observation for a few seconds before being pulled back into reactive patterns. But with consistent practice, those seconds became minutes, the minutes became hours, and eventually, sovereign observation became her default state of consciousness. The Institute of Noetic Sciences, founded by astronaut Edgar Mitchell, after his experience of expanded awareness while returning from the moon, has conducted hundreds of experiments documenting how human consciousness can affect physical systems in ways that defy classical physics. In a particularly fascinating study, published in 2018, they showed that when experienced meditators focused their intention on quantum random number generators, devices that produce perfectly random sequences based on radioactive decay, the devices began to produce statistically significant patterns, as if the focused consciousness were literally organizing quantum chaos into order. Even more impressively, the effect was not limited by distance. Meditators in California could affect generators in Princeton, 3,000 miles away, suggesting that consciousness operates through a non-local field that transcends the spatial limitations we assume are absolute. If human consciousness can organize random numbers at a distance, imagine what your focused, conscious observation can do with your own life, with your own personal field of reality. It's no coincidence that mystical traditions around the world, separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles, independently developed practices to access this state of neutral observation. The yogis of India called it Sakshi Bhav the witness consciousness. The Taoists of China spoke of Wu Wei effortless action that arises from non-interfering observation. The Sufi mystics described Muraqaba watchful awareness of the heart. The Zen monks practiced Shikantaza just sitting and observing without agenda. They intuitively understood, millennia before we had equipment to measure quantum fields, that the quality of consciousness determines the quality of experience. That how you observe is infinitely more important than what you observe, because the how determines the what in ways the rational mind cannot fully comprehend. But now we have something these ancient traditions did not. We have the ability to objectively measure the changes that happen when someone shifts their mode of observation. We can literally see on fMR is how different brain regions light up or quiet down. The default mode network, associated with rumination and self-reference, decreases its activity. The prefrontal cortex, associated with executive function and emotional regulation, becomes more active. The insula, which processes bodily awareness, shows greater connectivity with other brain regions. We can measure with EEGs how brainwaves shift from chaotic high beta patterns associated with stress and anxiety to more coherent alpha and theta patterns associated with meditative and creative states. We can detect with biofield equipment how the heart's electromagnetic field, which is approximately 5,000 times stronger electrically and 100 times stronger magnetically than the brain's field, changes its signature from chaotic and incoherent during fear-based observation to harmonious and coherent during presence-based observation. What these measurements consistently showed that when you can sustain sovereign observation for even brief periods, what researchers at the Hartmouth Institute have documented as a state of psychophysiological coherence, your entire body enters an optimized state of functioning. Heart rate variability increases, indicating greater resilience and adaptability. Blood pressure normalizes. The production of DHEA, the youth hormone, increases while cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases. The immune system strengthens, mental clarity increases, intuition sharpens, creativity blossoms. But most relevant to our discussion, your ability to influence the quantum field around you increases dramatically. It's like you switch from a crackly AM radio station to a crystal clear FM broadcast. The field can no longer ignore your signal. It has asterisk to respond to the clarity and coherence of your transmission. The moment Sarah truly understood this, not just intellectually, but in every fiber of her being, was on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after that first night of surrender. She was practicing the conscious observation technique when Marcus walked into the room with a strange expression on his face. Immediately, she felt the familiar tightening in her solar plexus, the heat rising, the beginning of the spiral of suspicion. But this time, instead of being swept away by the current of trauma, she paused. She breathed. She observed her observation happening. I am seeing through the filter of abandonment right now, she acknowledged without judgment. And in that acknowledgement, something shifted. She was able to see Marcus, truly see him for the first time in years. Not through the filter of fear, but as he actually was in that moment, a nervous man holding a small blue box with tears in his eyes. I know I haven't been the partner you deserve, he said, his voice trembling. But something changed in you these last few weeks, and it's changed something in me, too. It's like I can finally see you, really see you, and realize how blind I've been. He got down on one knee. In the box was a ring. Not a traditional engagement ring, but a commitment ring he had designed himself, with a Latin inscription, *observo, ergo cremus*. I observe, therefore we create. A play on Descartes, I think, therefore I am, but reflecting their new, shared understanding of the nature of reality. Sarah discovered something crucial in that moment that most people take a lifetime to understand, if they ever do. She realized she had spent years trying to manifest change from the same state of consciousness that had created the problems in the first place. As Albert Einstein famously observed, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. This is exactly what we do when we try to visualize abundance, while our nervous system is locked in scarcity mode, when we try to attract love while observing through the lens of abandonment, when we try to create health while our attention is fixated on disease. This brings us to the most critical point of this entire discussion, the moment of choice that defines whether you will continue to be a victim of circumstances or become the conscious architect of your experience. Once you understand somatically, with your whole being and not just your rational mind, that your observation is constantly selecting which version of reality manifests in your experience, you can no longer feign helplessness. You can no longer blame the universe, other people, your past, your genes, or your luck for what you are experiencing now. It is simultaneously the most terrifying and the most liberating revelation possible. Terrifying because it removes all excuses, all shields, all the victim stories we use to explain why our lives aren't the way we want them to be. Liberating because it means that in any given moment, including this exact moment, as you read these words, you have the power to begin observing differently and therefore begin collapsing a completely new timeline. The shift from victim to creator doesn't happen through positive affirmations or willpower. It happens through a fundamental change, how you relate to your own consciousness. Instead of being someone who has thoughts, you become the conscious space where thoughts appear and disappear like clouds in the sky. Instead of being someone who feels emotions, you become the unchanging presence that witnesses emotions arise and dissolve like waves in the ocean. Instead of being someone trying to change reality, you become the consciousness that is constantly selecting which reality to experience based on the frequency of your observation. It is a shift in identity so profound that it requires what spiritual traditions call the death of the ego. Not the annihilation of the ego in the sense of destruction, but the dissolution of the rigid identification with a separate, limited self. The ego, this psychological construct that believes it's an isolated individual fighting against a hostile or indifferent universe, has to relax its grip. It has to accept that it's not in charge in the way it thought it was, but also that it has far more power than it ever imagined, just a different kind of power. The ego operates through force, control, and manipulation. It tries to bend reality to its will through effort and struggle. But sovereign observation operates through alignment, allowing, and co-creation. It doesn't force reality to change. It changes the frequency of observation in such a way that a different reality naturally crystallizes from the field of infinite potential. Sarah experienced this death and rebirth of the ego over several months. There were moments of existential terror as the old structures of identity began to dissolve. Nights when she would wake up at 3 a.m. in a panic, not knowing who she was, if not for her stories of trauma and limitation. Days when she felt like she was floating without an anchor, without the familiarity of the old narratives to make sense of her experience. But she persisted. She continued practicing conscious observation. She continued choosing to see through the lens of presence instead of programming. And gradually, a new identity began to emerge. Not an identity based on what happened to her, but based on her ability to consciously choose how to observe. Not defined by her limitations, but by her infinite potential for perception. Not trapped by the past, but free to collapse any future her observation could conceive and sustain. The moment you stop being a passive receiver of reality and become an active transmitter of frequency, so subtle that most people pass through it without even realizing they've crossed the most important threshold of their entire existence. There are no celestial fireworks, no divine voice confirming your transformation, no certificate of enlightenment delivered by angels. There is only an almost imperceptible shift in the quality of your presence that begins to ripple through the quantum field like concentric waves in a perfectly still lake, subtly but profoundly altering the geometry of everything it touches. You still look like the same person on the outside. You still go to work, pay bills, deal with traffic, make dinner. But something fundamental has changed in the invisible equation that determines what the universe can and will deliver to you. You've stopped pleading and started commanding, not through force or manipulation, but through the natural authority that emerges when you finally understand your true role in this cosmic dance between consciousness and matter. It's like the difference between being a beggar pleading for scraps from the universe and realizing you are the heir to an infinite kingdom that was always yours, just waiting for you to claim your inheritance through conscious observation. The quantum field doesn't respond to desperate pleas. It responds to the coherent frequency of certainty, not the arrogant certainty of the ego, but the quiet certainty of one who knows who they truly are beyond all the temporary stories and identities. Let me share specifically what happened to Sarah after she stabilized in this new way of being. The first 2 weeks after the moment with Marcus and the ring were serenely calm. Nothing dramatic happened externally. In fact, a few things initially seemed to get worse. Her boss announced a restructuring that threatened her new position. Her car broke down, needing expensive repairs. A close friend had a crisis and needed intensive support. But something fundamental had changed in how Sarah experienced these events. Instead of spiraling into the familiar panic and catastrophizing, creating elaborate stories about how everything was falling apart, she found herself curiously neutral, almost fascinated, observing the events as if they were clouds passing in the sky, temporary, impersonal, and certainly not definitive of what was to come. She continued to practice the conscious observation protocol every morning when she woke up and every night before bed, not because she expected specific results, but because the state itself had become more interesting, more alive, more real than any result could be. It was exactly when she completely let go of the need for external change, when she stopped observing to get something and started observing for the sheer joy of conscious observation, that reality began to reorganize itself in ways that defied all linear logic. In the 3rd week, the boss who had announced the restructuring called her for a private meeting. "Sarah, I don't know what's changed in you," he said, "but your presence in meetings has been transformative. People are more creative, more collaborative when you're in the room. We're creating a new position, Director of Innovation and Culture. It's yours if you want it." The salary was double her current one. The responsibilities aligned perfectly with her natural talents that had been suppressed for years. The mechanic called about the car. "Ma'am, the strangest thing happened. When I went to finalize the estimate, I discovered your car is still under an extended warranty you apparently bought and forgot about. The repair won't cost you a thing." She checked her records. She hadn't bought an extended warranty. But there it was, in black and white, with her signature, dated 3 years prior. Her friend in crisis had a breakthrough during one of their conversations. "Sarah, being around you is, well, it's like I can finally breathe. It's like there's more space for me to be myself." The friend ended up finding her own path to healing, and their friendship deepened in ways that benefited them both. Marcus transformed in ways that seemed like science fiction. He didn't change his fundamental personality, but it was as if the best parts of him, the parts that had been dormant or suppressed, suddenly blossomed. He started meditating without her suggesting it. He signed up for therapy on his own. He began reading about quantum physics and consciousness, not to impress her, but out of genuine curiosity. Their conversations evolved into deep explorations of the nature of reality, of love, of human potential. The most extraordinary thing was not these external changes themselves. It was Sarah's understanding that the external changes were just natural side effects, the inevitable symptoms of her having fundamentally changed how she observed and, therefore, what she transmitted to the field. Science is finally beginning to map what mystics and sages have always known intuitively. There is a silent language being constantly exchanged between your consciousness and the universal quantum field. It is an unceasing dialogue where each of your observations is a question, and every experience you live is the answer. You ask not with words, but with the frequency of your observation. The field answers not with concepts, but with experiences that match the frequency of the question exactly. Researchers at the Institute of Noetic Sciences have documented hundreds of cases where the focused intention of trained observers managed to alter physical systems in ways that are statistically impossible to explain by chance. They have shown that consciousness can affect the growth of cells in a culture, influence the behavior of enzyme systems, and even alter the rate of radioactive decay, something that should be absolutely fixed according to the known laws of physics. In one particularly revealing experiment, they had two groups of people meditate with different intentions, directed at water samples that would later be used to water plants. One group focused on love and gratitude towards the water, The other maintained a neutral intention. The plants watered with the charged water grew significantly faster and healthier, a result replicated dozens of times under controlled laboratory conditions. If focused human consciousness can affect water and plants, imagine what your constant, 24/7 observation is doing to your own life, to your own body, which is 70% water, to your own cells, which are constantly responding to the information fields you generate with your observation. You don't need to wait for mainstream science to fully accept and explain what is already happening in your life daily. Every time you genuinely change how you observe something and the situation mysteriously shifts without any direct physical action on your part, you are experiencing firsthand the power of conscious observation to collapse new timelines from the infinite field of potential. But here comes a necessary warning, because integrity matters more than inspiring false hope. The journey of becoming a conscious observer, of moving from a victim of circumstances to an architect of experience, is not linear, not always comfortable, and definitely not the path of least resistance your conditioned ego would prefer to take. There will be what I call echo tests, moments where old triggers reappear with full force, not because you have failed or regressed, but because they are opportunities to solidify your new observer consciousness. It's as if the universe is asking, are you sure? Are you really sure you want to operate this new way? Let's see if you can maintain sovereign observation when this old, familiar demon shows up. Sarah experienced several of these echo tests. 6 months after her initial transformation, Marcus had to travel for work for 3 weeks. During the second week, he went an entire day without responding to her texts. The old panic of abandonment surged with volcanic force. She found herself obsessively checking his Instagram, looking for signs of betrayal. For a few hours, it was as if all her progress had evaporated. But then she remembered, this is an echo test, an opportunity to choose consciously instead of reacting automatically. She applied the protocol, she breathed, she observed her observation happening. I am collapsing through trauma right now, she acknowledged. And in that acknowledgement, she reclaimed her power of choice. Instead of continuing the spiral, she chose to trust. Not a blind or naive trust, but a trust based on her sovereign decision to observe through possibility instead of paranoia. When Marcus finally called, he was in the hospital. He had collapsed from exhaustion from overworking and had been unconscious for hours. His phone had broken in the fall. He was okay but scared, and the first thing he did when he woke up was find a way to contact her. If she had continued in the spiral of traumatic observation, she would have attacked him with accusations when they finally spoke, that would have created distance and hurt at a moment when he needed support. Instead, because she chose sovereign observation, she was present, calm, and loving. This deepened their connection in ways that years of couples therapy had failed to achieve. These moments of choice come dozens of times a day at the beginning. Every interaction, every email, every glance in the mirror, every check of the bank account is an opportunity to observe through trauma or through presence. It's exhausting at first, like learning to drive when you have to think consciously about every single move. But gradually, sovereign observation becomes your new pattern, your new normal, your default setting. The universe isn't testing you when things get difficult. It is responding to the mixed quality of your observation as you transition from one way of being to another. It's like a snake that needs to go through the extreme discomfort of shedding its skin in order to grow. The old skin served its purpose. It protected you when you needed it, but now it's too tight. It must be discarded, so the new, more expansive skin can emerge. Every time you choose to observe consciously, even when it's uncomfortable, every time you practice sovereign presence when it would be easier to collapse into the familiar drama of trauma, you are strengthening a new muscle of awareness. You are creating new neural pathways, establishing new activation patterns in the brain, and building a new vibrational baseline that will eventually become as automatic and natural as breathing. When that day comes, and it will come if you persist with consistent practice, you will look back and barely recognize the person you used to be. That person who thought they were trapped, limited, and at the mercy of forces beyond their control will seem like a character from a half-remembered dream. You will have become something else entirely, not a different person, but the same consciousness finally awakened to its true power and potential. Sarah is now 3 years into this journey. She and Marcus got married in a simple but profound ceremony where their vows were about committing to observe each other and their life together through the lenses of love and possibility. She left her corporate job and started her own consulting firm teaching what she calls quantum leadership, helping executives and entrepreneurs understand how their quality of observation affects not just their personal success, but the entire culture of their organizations. Financially, she went from being constantly in the red to an abundance that still surprises her. Not millions falling from the sky, but a consistent and growing flow that seems to appear exactly when needed, always in ways she could not have predicted or planned. Her health, which had deteriorated under years of chronic stress, has flourished. Digestive issues disappeared. Insomnia transformed into deep, restorative sleep. Even her appearance has changed, not through cosmetic procedures, but through the vitality that emerges naturally when you stop wasting massive energy maintaining unnecessary defenses. But beyond all these measurable improvements in her external life, the real transformation was internal. Sarah now lives in a fundamentally different universe than the one she inhabited before. She didn't change her physical address, she changed her vibrational address, her perceptual address, her quantum address. The world she experiences now is rich with possibility, abundant with synchronicities, and alive with creative potential. Not because she got lucky or was chosen, but because she learned to consciously choose how to observe. If this knowledge has resonated with something deep inside you, if you felt that unmistakable chill of recognition that comes when a fundamental truth is revealed, then your next step is not optional, it is essential. Subscribe to this channel right now, turn on all notifications, because this is just the beginning of a journey of awakening that will systematically demolish every illusion that keeps you trapped in a reality smaller than the one you came here to experience. And more importantly, much more importantly than any external action, comment below. I observe with new eyes. This is not just a comment. It is a declaration of intent to the quantum field. It is a conscious collapse of words into the digital field that is in itself an act of observation that begins to change your frequency. You are signaling to the quantum field, to the universe, and most importantly, to yourself, that you are ready for a new experience, a new timeline, a new version of yourself that has always existed in the field of infinite potential, just waiting for you to have the eyes to see. The reality you experience tomorrow is not determined by what happened yesterday. It is determined by the quality of your observation *now*. Every moment is a quantum choice point where infinite possibilities wait to be collapsed into experience through your conscious observation. The question is not whether you have this power. Physics has proven that you do. The question is, how are you going to use it? Will you continue to collapse the same limited timeline through unconscious, traumatic observation? Or will you awaken to your role as the conscious architect of reality and begin to observe through lenses that reveal the miraculous hidden in the mundane? The choice, as it always has been and always will be, is yours. And it renews itself in every moment, with every breath, with every glance you cast upon your life. The quantum field is waiting. What will you observe, and therefore create, today?